So we all came together with this dream. You know, I mean, it started with this Instagram post talking about Wu-Tang, and then, you know, conversation, and then a bunch of conversations. We fasting, we praying, and, you know, we started dreaming about, like, man, what would this look like? And I mean, that's really where we are right now. We're dreaming about, you know, what we want to see happen in Baltimore. And I think for me, like, one of my favorite stories is in Numbers 13 and 14, and, you know, that's when Joshua and Caleb went to go spy out the land with 10 other spies. But Joshua and Caleb were the only two that said, hey, man, we can take this land. And, you know, they saw the same thing everybody else saw, which, like, man, there were giants in the land. But the difference was their focus. You know, they focused on, but this is what God told us. This is what is in the land that's possible for us. And so they were looking at the possibilities and not the problems. And I think that's kind of how we are as well. You know, it's like we're looking at the possibilities of what it looks like for us to come together. I mean, listen, there's a ton of challenges. Talking about merging and, you know, all of that can come along with that. But
this is a church plan. There's going to be challenges everywhere.
Regardless, you know what I'm saying? Regardless.
Irregardless of the fact.
Life.
Yeah, right.
Irregardless of the fact.
Right.
Yes.
And so then in Numbers 14, you know, man, the people just, like, man, they, like, fell out. They're like, yo, man, like, we wish we were back in Egypt. You know, like, why, like, yo, hold on now. You know, like, we don't. So we're
leaks.
Yeah,
Leaks.
Yeah. We don't anticipate that's gonna happen. But there's always a perspective of this place is comfortable.
Right.
Like, man, going into this unknown is, like,
Terrifying.
It's terrifying. Yeah. So, you know, I just want us to just kind of talk through a little bit of what we see. You know, what we envision. That's just vision cast a little bit for what we hope to happen as we come together.
It goes back to me to this article in Christianity Today where it was saying that brunch had replaced Sunday worship for a lot of millennials, because at brunch you were able to speak into the things that you really were feeling that were plaguing our community. And that church, we were like just skipping over those topics. And so that at brunch with your friends and your peers, you could get deep into those things that really are bothering you. And so for that article, it was a lot with, you know, just the racial injustice that was going on right now that they felt like a lot of churches were avoiding. But I think for us, there's a huge gap in between the haves and have-nots.
Right.
And
for sure.
there is just this gap that is just causing major just lack of upper mobility, in that, you know, 5% of people that are born in poverty stay in poverty. And so, and what's the church's voice into that? And for us, I know, like, dreaming about, like, how can we play a role in that? And Josh, you talked about in a previous episode of just church being the trusted convener in the community.
Right.
And so how do we use that leverage to make a difference and start speaking into things like unemployment,
Right.
or underemployed,
Right.
and job creation, and even job training, and that making sure that I saw something that most folks, like our folks, they lose their job after 3 months because they can't handle feedback.
Yeah.
And so, like, how do we get into those soft life skills and start playing a role into that? We talked about having a hub, actual physical building where we could do community development. And in that hub, we could have nonprofit partners that are doing the work in the community, but they just don't have a place to do it in.
Right.
And so we need to, because there's some great organizations out there, but how do we as a church help support them?
Yeah.
And give them a space to do what they need to do.
Now, if I could add just to that, because I'm already here and I already felt pushback in my spirit.
Okay.
Of what ain't the church's job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I can encourage us,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
that even, especially in the Clinton era, but the church has its nonprofit status because of that stuff. We were granted that 501c3 status where we don't have to pay taxes because we were caring for the widows.
Right.
We were caring for orphans, and we were caring for the homeless.
Right.
So now, I'm not saying that's all we need to do, but I'm saying there is responsibility for the church, and not even in just that space. We need Christian leaders in all of those spaces, with working with the homeless, with all those different things. And if we can, and we've already talked about this also, if we can come behind organizations and people that are already doing this work. Let's tag along.
Right.
We tag along. We could resource tag anyway.
Yeah, and that's the piece right there that I think is, Reg, you mentioned it about like the church being a trusted convener, or mentioned that I mentioned it, but I really feel like that's such a huge deal. I know we talked about some basketball references before, but like my mind goes to like my transition in life from like being a huge Michael Jordan fan to really kind of appreciating more the game and style of play of Magic Johnson, and the difference is, like Mike, man, he would just take over a game and it was just incredible. I mean, still is incredible to watch. But the older I got, I understood that like Magic was Magic because like he had the ball, but he could make everybody around him better, and he can have other people shine. And I think that's the magic of the church, is that like we can be in a position where we can develop these relationships with people who, like you were saying, Charlie, they've got skills and they've got, a lane. And so like, what would it look like for us with a hub facility or resources to be able to come alongside and help deploy them at a much greater rate and then have higher impact? That's the stuff I dream about. Like, can we make magic in Baltimore? Not just because we're doing it, but we're empowering and creating space for other people to do it well.
But and that goes even back to what we talked about earlier. So, and for me, it was Eric Snow and Allen Iverson. We got a couple years on me, but that. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I mean, Iverson got a lot of shine, but Eric Snow was the one.
That's all right. I'll show you some magic video. It's all good.
But with us collaborating, that helps. That takes pressure off of us. That alleviates his tension in certain places, and we can have a stronger unit. But the same thing with some of these organizations that might need some help from on our side. Like you said, if there's a hub, like they have great ideas but no location. Hey, we got a location. Hey, use this. So there's so much doggone potential, man. So much potential.
And Charlie, you've mentioned in the past, that when people say it's not the church's role, but when you talked about hospitals started because of churches, right? Schools started because of the churches, and there's this belief that the churches, we should have, and I think we do have, that we want you to have life to the fullest, right? And we have to be that voice piece, that advocate in the community that's doing that. And if not us, who, right? And so I think that's when people say like, man, that's not the church's role. It is absolutely our role.
Well, and that's why I think what we're desiring to do, the dream that we have, is creating a new category for how people think about church.
Yeah.
Because if it's only reduced down to Sunday morning, I don't need Sunday morning no more. I got many other options, whether it's brunch or I can watch the best communicators in the world from the comfort of my own home.
True. True.
But if my community that I'm a part of is fueling and injecting life and hope and vitality into this community, I want to be a part of that. And that's not just a Sunday morning thing. And so that's why I feel like what we're trying to do is creating a new category in people's minds that they've been looking for. None of us were looking for an iPod until Steve Jobs provided it. And so I'm saying, man, let's come up with that thing that everybody's already needing, yearning for, talking about without talking about. And by us coming together, it creates that it gives words and expression to that.
But and to your point, the reason why there's a lot of brands and organizations and even social media influencers from y'all name drop Dave Sleepers for Suckers, the Dave Shans, like all these little, is because they're addressing what pressing needs, gaps, and creating a community. Because it's not even on some old following stuff. It's like, you're creating a space of community for where other folk like you
can get together.
Shade Room has one of the strongest communities right this moment. Right this moment. You know what I mean? World Star Hip Hop. World Star Hip Hop. And so anyways.
Well, I think just to kind of bring this in, I do want to just say specifically that, like, from a dream standpoint, we've said that, if we had one bucket, the bucket would be empowerment. That's the bucket. And, we see that in discipleship and equipping and sending. Right. That has to be foundational for us. Supporting a creative class in a city like Baltimore. I mean, like, this is one of the most creative cities out there. I mean, like, the creatives in this city, just the stuff that they're doing. But you know what I hear? Man, there's no support, there's no outlets, well, I shouldn't say no, but like limited, Right. So one of my guys is like, yo, man, like, the creatives, they do their thing here and then they leave, Right. So like, what would it look like for the church to support creatives and create, space for them? That's empowering. And to see God at work in them through their art. And Reggie talked about workforce development and business incubation. Like, there's a ton of entrepreneurs in this city who need that next level, of support or funding or whatever the case may be, that we, with a hub facility, could help create for them, And I mean, the list goes on. Educationally, we already partner with a school, in the city. Both of us, both churches have partnered with schools and invested, and worked with principals. So empowerment is the bucket for us. And when we talk about dreaming to have impact in this city, that's how we're thinking about it.
And even from they tease and call me the old man on this table, but I mean, I think
you definitely the OG, bro.
Well, from the OG's perspective, as far as looking at young church planners, it's just a beautiful thing to see the message that is being given out, and just like, especially with you all, just like taking this information, going through like this process, but being willing to share this process, especially to the next generation. Like, I know as Black men, we don't have that. We don't have a model, a blueprint, a guy to always step into these situations. Right. We go through every little bucket and thimble to get what we need. Right. When I think it's just exciting to see, like, you guys and young planners to say, like, hey, we're going to help create this path, and we're going to share our resources. Right. And we're not hoarding anything to keep this to ourselves. And so that's beautiful, because it's going to set up the next generation and the generation to follow.
That's right.
Sure.